Hi everyone, welcome back to Tallulah Talks. That is me. Today is Sunday, which means it is time for Sunday's Haunting Hour. Apologies for not being here for the last week or so. One of my animals died. It was very upsetting, but I am back now. I had heard of this, like the Pendle witches, but I hadn't really looked into it because obviously they're not as famous as the Salem witches. I hope I've got that right. Um, and I had actually wondered if I had done this before because some of the names were looking familiar. And I was like, I don't think I've done this before. I looked for my YouTube. I was like, no, I've definitely not done it before. And then it hit me. I read a book called The Familiars, I believe. I can't remember who the author is. And it was at the time of the Pendle Witch trials. And all these names. And I was like, oh, that's where I've heard it before. So let's just get straight into it with our book of stories. So the Pendle Witch trials were known to be pretty notorious in the 1600s. They were there's many dark stories surrounding these trials, just like the Salem witch trials. And it happened around Lancaster Castle, aka Pendle Hill. 12 women were accused of witchcraft. However, only 11 went to trial because one of the women accused died when she was being held. She was a bit older, the conditions weren't great, and so unfortunately she passed away before she could go to trial. One was tried and found guilty, and she was described, at this time, it was described as pretty unusual because the trial with the witches were pretty well documented, which you don't really find from times like the 1600s, and that's what's so unusual about it, and that is how we know about it. There was a publication by Thomas Potts called The Discovery of Witches, the County of Lancaster. Over, I guess it was like centuries, there were witch trials held within the UK, and less than 500 were executed for this crime. This series of trials accounts for only 2% of the witch trials in the summer of 1612. 6 of the 11 witches on trial came from rivaling families. They were the Demdikes and the Shattocks families. Both heads of the families, so both, I think it was like the grandmother of the families, were living in poverty, and they were widows, and they were known to be Elizabeth Demdike and Anne Chattox. Elizabeth had been suspected to be a witch for a really long time, 50 years, and she was just accepted because she was known to be a healer, and people within the county would come to her for her healing remedies, so it was just accepted. The level of witchcraft in Pendle at the time meant that this actually generated quite a lot of money for the county, and for the people posing to be healers and witches, because it meant that they were getting money for this and they maybe weren't in so much poverty and weren't having to try so hard. Witchcraft was feared, but it also kind of piqued people's curiosity, and this actually included King James I of England. He was very interested in witchcraft, and he actually even wrote a book called Demonology. It told readers to condemn and prosecute supporters of witches, and those practicing. These views were then actually imposed into law. So the Justice of the Peace in Lancashire of 1612 was told to compile a list on what made a person a witch. And this list included people who didn't attend church or take communion. Lancashire was previously described as a lawless county. There was a lot of crime going on, and this was also related to the sympathy being with the Catholic Church. So obviously back then, and still now I think in Ireland, you get the kind of rivalry between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, and I think King James must have been Protestant at this time. 2 judges then investigated and sentenced the Pendle witches. There was an altercation between Alison Device and a peddler named John Law, and she was either, it's kind of unclear, but she was either travelling or begging, we're not sure which. They were both in a forest, and Device passed John Law and asked for pins. However, it's unsure whether she was paying for these pins or if she just intended to keep them without payment. He refused this, and Device allegedly put a curse on him, and shortly after this he did suffer a stroke, and it made him incapable of walking and doing much else for himself. This was brought before Justice Powell, and Device actually confessed that she had caused Law to become lame or without the use of his legs. During questioning, Device accused one of the Demdikes and other members of witchcraft, and this is how they were all brought to trial. The accusation was thought to be some kind of revenge, and John Device, blamed the illness leading to his death on the old Demdike family, because by then I think their names had changed. So the Device would have probably been the Shattuck's family originally. The family had originally threatened Device and didn't pay yearly for what he called protection. So whether he was just trying to get them out their money, I'm not sure, but it was apparent that he believed they had cursed him for this. There was also deaths of 4 villagers that also led to the trial, and this was deemed as witchcraft by the Shattuck's family. Further investigation found both families did confess to selling their souls to the devil, and the trials were held on the 17th and 19th of August of 1612. However, one of the family's old Demdike, as she was known, had died while she was being held. The kind of key witness, I guess you would call it, was 9-year-old Jennet Device. She was a key witness, and most of her evidence was used. And she gave evidence against her own family, which would have been the old Shattuck's family. Many of the Pendle witches were convinced of their own guilt, and Alison Device actually believed that she did have this power. I also should mention Jennet Device was also hung with the rest of her family, unfortunately. There was only one of the witches on trial that came face to face, and that was Alison with John Law, face to face with one of her victims. And when entering the court, it was said that Device fell to her knees and just confessed what she had done. I guess she must have felt bad. So obviously with that, the Pendle witches were hung, and it's believed that that is what makes the Pendle Hill site the site of all these hauntings. It is known to be haunted by the witches who were hung here in 1612, and it is said that whenever you visit, a lot of visitors have said that whenever they kind of enter the grounds, they feel very intense anger. And there are also specific areas that are popular with seeing the ghosts. So I think one of them was Malkin Tower, which was the old Device family home. This was actually torn down, but obviously this is the site where it was. It was destroyed shortly after their trial, and there have been other sightings around the site. So probably where the hangings took place and where they lived, essentially. There are people who have caught images and stuff. So Ashley Firth caught an image in 2019. She said that a mist appeared kind of instantly and surrounded her, and she saw what she believed was 2 faces in this mist. In autumn 2014, Alan Pickover met, or said he kind of met the ghost at Waddle Hall. He said that it was a shadowy figure that was heading towards him, and it kind of freaked him out, and so he ran back to his car and left. In 2004, Most Haunted actually also went to the location Pendle Hill, and they did a 3-day live Halloween special. So seeing all the images that they saw was actually live, so it wasn't edited in any way. I haven't actually watched the episodes. I probably should, but it is said that they did see and hear and feel a lot of things when they were there. Yvette Fielding, who's the host, actually described it as one of the most disturbing places and hauntings that she had ever experienced. And if she's saying that, don't know how keen you are to go up there, but I'm not. After the episode, this is when sightings kind of peaked, and there were 81 reported sightings. Images can be found of the spirits that are supposedly at Pendle Hill. One of the most common being Jennet Device. Visitors reportedly see a small girl. So obviously I think she was the youngest to be hung there. Christine Hamlet, who is a psychic, I believe, she took pictures of what looked like a young girl by like the gravestones, I guess, of the Pendle witches. And Hamlet believes this was actually Jennet Device. And she also saw the shadow of a man. She's not sure who this was. It could possibly be John Law, because obviously he was allegedly cursed by one of the families. We just don't know, because I don't know if anyone's actually communicated with the spirits. While sort of in one of the areas of Pendle Hill, one of the guides had used a Ouija board to kind of communicate with the spirits, and suddenly, it was at Malkin Tower, and suddenly a human tooth allegedly landed in the centre of the table, and the kind of people that were there and the guide himself were kind of left baffled. And I think they kind of obviously closed up the Ouija board after that. But this is actually quite common, and people have said that teeth kind of fall out the sky, but and they actually went round the circle of people to check if anyone had a tooth missing, and no one did, and it was very obviously a human tooth. Strange occurrences do continue to happen to this day. Like I said, the teeth falling from the sky and the sightings of a particular woman. In 2018, another paranormal enthusiast group went out to Pendle Hill and found what was said to be a witch's bottle, and it was like a jar, but it had some identified objects, nails and screws, but these were reportedly for protection, to protect these witches. I couldn't really find much more on the sightings at Pendle Hill. There's probably obviously a lot, but when you look up Pendle Hill, it is mainly the history of the hanging of witches that happened there, which is obviously really sad, because we'll never know whether they were witches in a sense or not, because there was a lot of things that made you a witch back then, like King James I had put into law, like if you didn't go to church, you were probably a witch. But there have been a lot of sightings, and maybe definitely go and check out that Most Haunted episode. If you just type in Most Haunted Pendle Witches, it'll probably come up. I think it's like a 2-hour episode. But I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of curious to go up there one day and see what people have seen, but then at the same time it's kind of like, no, I'm good. But if you have been at Pendle Hill, let me know down in the comments, and let me know of your experiences. And if this is the kind of content you like, go and hit that subscribe button. I am here every Wednesday and Sunday. And I will see you on Wednesday.